are back. Your favorite podcast show of the week. It's Location Weekly. It's episode number 583. We're recording on August the 23rd. And as you can see, Aubriana's not here. She's away on a well-deserved vacation in the British Virgin Islands with her husband and some friends. And we are blessed instead to have Rob Woodbridge with us, the original co-founder of this podcast with me, returning for a guest appearance in his Montreal Expos shirt. And Rob, how are you? Welcome back.
Steve, it is great to be back. I just want to be very clear, is that I am not a suitable replacement for Aubriana at all. And I think I'm actually upset that you guys aren't doing this from the British Virgin Islands on a boat somewhere, doing a podcast together in the sunshine. But It is great to be back. It is great to be back. I'm trying to think, like, when was that? It's been at least a billion episodes since I was here, at least. Because you've done a billion and one.
We did one with the three of us, right? A little while back.
It was before 500, though. Like you're like 500, 583. Yeah. Super impressive. And I mean, I know what it's like to do a podcast, and I know the commitment that it takes to get a podcast out every week. And for those listening, to do this 583 times is A, ridiculous, but B, incredible at the same time. Nuts. The commitment is there.
For sure. It's a passion though, right? Like, we love doing it, and honestly, like, the discipline, of preparing for this and finding the stories and all of that is what, sort of keeps me abreast of what's going on in the space, right? So, I actually like doing that legwork and kind of figuring it out each week, and then it helps keep me on top of things. So, So with that,
kudos.
we've got four stories as usual that we're going to cover off here. And since Rob is filling in for Aubriana, he's going to kick it off with the first story this week, which is a Canadian one. So
I love it. Start with Canada. Start with the west coast of Canada in BC. So this is an initiative done by BC Transit, and they're launching something called Next Ride for real-time transit information for their local transportation. And it's an initiative to really to start implementing automatic vehicle location technology on their buses. And I always think, I always think about these things as saying, like, haven't we done this already? Like, isn't there a black box in every bus already? And haven't we started to leverage all of this data so that it makes riders, it allows riders to know when buses are coming and when they should get to the bus stop and how many passengers on it? And the answer is oftentimes, like, you just assume that these things are happening everywhere. But here we are implementing this in BC. So what's happened so far, 9 regions in BC have implemented this. So they've installed these tracking devices on their buses, and there are 11 more to go for the rest of the summer. It does exactly as you would expect it to do, which is it allows passengers to log in through a web-based app, and they'll be able to find on their smart devices, obviously, they'll be able to find where their buses are, what buses are on their route, when they're supposed to arrive, how many people are on the bus at the same time, which is very interesting to understand, whether, especially in this COVID world or the world that we're emerging into. It also allows you to plan your day a little bit better for better scheduling. It sends out notifications around delays if something's wrong. Up here in Canada, it is always about the snow in the winter. If these articulating buses, at least in Ottawa, that every time there is a snowstorm in Ottawa, you can drive by dozens of articulated buses that are stuck in snow. We haven't really perfected that. Maybe there's an opportunity. But it will also allow for in-bus experience, in-transit experience, where it automatically shows there's an LED board in these buses that show the next stop, and then there is actually these next stops are audibly announced through this service. And it is I think the biggest and greatest thing about this is that they're open sourcing all of this data and enabling or allowing other application developers to start to create apps around the data that they're pulling from the buses and scheduling. So this, yay Canada, yay BC. And I think that this is going to be great once it's in every region in BC, so that it's consistency across the board. but I just assumed, man, that all of this stuff was done. Am I wrong there?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assumption, right? And I'm here in Toronto, and living downtown-ish now, or on the edges of downtown Toronto. So I'm finding myself using more and more public transit, taking streetcars to go to Jays games, or things like that. And and we have this here in Toronto, and I've been using this. Like, I literally get on and I like jump on Google Maps, or I jump on these things, and it says, next train will be at that stop in 3 minutes or whatever, and it's
Yeah,
super helpful. Like, that's what you need. Do I have time to go run to the coffee shop across the street or not? Absolutely, this is valuable stuff, and I think, as you point out, like in a COVID time where a lot of these operations are dealing with delays or labor shortage issues or
yeah,
whatever. Like, it's just creating a lot of backlog and a lot of delays, or less buses, less trains running, on these systems. So it may not be the same schedules you were used to pre-COVID, right? Like, certainly that's
yep.
the case here in Toronto, where we are. Like, we used to have express go trains running from my local station to the downtown Union Station, that would run every 20-30 minutes, no stops, and we don't have that anymore. So they're few and far between now. And yeah, so I think having this, and I like that they've got the open source around the data, enabling others to kind of build on top of this. I'm sitting here thinking, could we use this at ground level? Like, could we pull data from what's going on there to kind of inform movement? Maybe, I need to think
For
about
sure, you
that.
could.
So that could be super interesting to think about what we could pull
Do you
from
remember back in the
transit.
day, like in Ottawa with OC Transpo, and maybe it was like this in Toronto and probably across the country and in the States as well, is that you would go to a bus stop and they would have the bus stop itself cemented into the ground with a little flag on the top. And then there was this little information display where you would look it up and you'd say, like, I'm looking for the, bus number 7. And then it would tell you kind of when the schedule was. It would be printed out and put in there, and so you would assume that was accurate, and that's how it used to operate. And then they moved into a phone number, so you call a phone number, city number, and there would be a 4-digit code for that bus stop, and then you could listen to. I mean, I don't know how you would do it back before cell phones, but they had it. And then you remember what your 4-digit number was on your bus stop, and then from your home rotary line you call, and then you punch in or you dial in your 4-digit bus stop number, and then it would tell you when the bus is. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like a minute away, and I missed it. Like, so I think that we've come quite a long way in this from where we were, but it just seems like it's taken a long time. Where are my damn flying
Yeah.
cars? That's what I'm asking. Where are my damn flying cars?
Yeah. I had a similar analog or sort of experience recently. So I still play softball every summer, and so one of the leagues I played in this summer, there's like a line like a number that you call to find out if the games have been rained out or not. And literally you call, and there's like you have to keep checking, like dialing into this thing to see if there's any updates. Like a voice message that's been left there to say, yes, the games have been wiped out for tonight or whatever. Like, it's yeah, like, you'd
Brutal.
think there'd be a more digital way to do that, but
Like Twitter. Like
yeah,
Twitter.
like Twitter. Yes.
Like they've invented it. No.
Anyhow, all right, on to our second story. So moving over to the U.S., specifically Cincinnati, Ohio. There's a startup there called PayTile. That's one word, PayTile. And they've launched a mobile app that uses geolocation and proximity technology to deliver cashless payments and rewards to users. And what's interesting about this, it's obviously there's a lot of peer-to-peer payments solutions out there, and you've got WeChat Pay and Alipay and all these kinds of different things out there that you can send money with. But what's kind of unique about this, and a little bit different about how it works, is that it's it enables you to make these payments privately, securely, and to people nearby you from a geolocation point of view. So you don't actually have to have any sort of relationship per se between, your phone and, the intended person's phone in a predefined way, without sending any personal details or information like that. So basically, and I love the analogy, they describe this as PayPal is like airdrop for cash. Um, and so basically, you can tip your, valet or your, cab driver or, somebody at the farmer's market or whoever, wherever you're at, and limit the payments to people, or businesses that are nearby you. And so I think this is super interesting. Obviously it's not earth shattering in terms of technology, but I think from a use case point of view, it's really cool. To see that they're using location technology in that way and enabling people to kind of transfer cash from a device to another device nearby. So I kind of like it. It's yeah, it's a game changer in some ways. What are your thoughts?
I think that the biggest pain with any transaction are those transaction fees. Like if you can eliminate those transaction fees, like that is golden. If there's a way to leverage this on a business scale, I mean, remember the app Bump? Do you remember way back in the day
Yeah,
there was
of course.
like
Yes.
it was well before there was proximity based any chips anything in a phone and I remember interviewing those guys, Dave, and talking about what the potential was for this technology. And I'm trying to think, like it was probably 10, 11, 12 years ago before it was acquired by Google. And it's good to see these kind of practical applications coming through, leveraging that they use Bluetooth and motion and to simulate the
Right.
bump. And you didn't really have to smash each other's phone to transfer contact information. But
Yeah.
I believe that this makes it so much easier. We're doing construction on our house. We're doing renovation, and I mean I have to go to a bank to get a check or send them an e-transfer, and this would probably be a lot easier if I could just use this kind of technology to pay them. It would deplete my bank account much faster, I suppose, but it's all going out anyways. I definitely love this kind of stuff, and especially in the delivery space that we're in. Like this would be very useful. We've moved away from bank cards and credit cards, and they're there. The underpinnings are there, but I tap with my watch, and that's all I pay now, and that's how I pay everything.
Right.
And I just believe that there's a spot for this kind of technology everywhere. Now, I do have one question.
Potential integration
But how do you?
conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's always about winners and losers, right? So like that the
Yeah.
impact of this is how many people use this. It's that network effect. So how many other services are out there doing this? And then how do you, because you can't have a little niche spot. You can't own a little neighborhood because then it's too cumbersome to be carrying multiple apps to do this. And you have to be able to find one that is universal. And it can be universal in the city, or there's a certain tipping point that it arrives at. And that's always the challenge. The tech is easy, and I mean that facetiously. It's not often easy, but the hardest part is adoption and the network effect to be able to get it to be used seamlessly. I remember when Interac rolled out, debit cards rolled out, and it took a long time for that to hit everywhere. And you think that it's been here for a lifetime, but that's what these services need to be able to do, is just get out and be used.
Yeah, I'm going to pull this one down. It's available in Apple and Google
Yeah.
stores right now, and currently rolling out in Cincinnati, where they're based. But I could see this, sort of growing quickly. And maybe I'm going to reach out to these guys too and see if we can get them down to Retail Local. I think this could be an interesting story to highlight down there.
Definitely. And like if you can enable commerce everywhere, and you see
Yeah,
that companies like Shopify are doing that, companies like our next door, like Facebook is doing this, is that if you can enable commerce absolutely everywhere on in every plane and in every moment. So whether it's a
exactly.
booth at Retail Local or walking down the street, I think that's what it shouldn't be a pain in the butt to sell something or get paid for something. And really that's where we are right now. It's cumbersome, and this eliminates that. Get them down there, Alok.
There you go. Well, speaking about paying for something, you've got another story to share with us.
Yeah, and this is that story that's a Take app, and this is a Singaporean-based company or startup that that was noticed simply because of the founder, who is an ex Meta employee, and left to start something that obviously he has a passion for, and he started this company called TakeApp, and it was really to level the playing field in Singapore for these restaurants, to actually help these restaurants leverage what they're doing on WhatsApp for ordering. So that whole concept of ordering from everywhere and creating a funnel into something that these companies or these merchants or these restaurants already are using, and that's WhatsApp for customer service. So they call themselves a WhatsApp order form. And it takes you back to the early web days where it literally is a website creation tool for companies like restaurants or bakeries or grocery stores, and you go in there and you order, you create the website, and then you enable your customers to order from it. And then what's unique about it, and there's a couple of other companies that are doing this, is it takes that order and it just simply shoves it into WhatsApp, into a channel in WhatsApp that enables your support team or your sales team to follow up and actually bring that order in. And that's what it does. So Meta has invested in this company a small amount. It's a seed round of $1 million. They just finished going through Y Combinator, and so the combination of Meta and YC and some angels has allowed them to raise just over $1 million. And they're really making that ordering process part of an existing process of how they currently support their customers. One of the key things that is they've highlighted is that they do not handle any of the payment side of it, nor do they handle any of the delivery side of it. They're just taking an order and bringing it into WhatsApp, and then it's up to you to do the rest as a company. But I walked through a bunch of their videos this morning, and it seems very easy to use. It's in the familiar style that you've already known in all of the food ordering apps or the grocery ordering apps that you have. There's a little bit of a setup process, but it seems pretty easy to do it. And the big thing is that I'd say 90% of the features are free. You don't have to pay for this. This was set up to support existing restaurants during this time of crisis, and then he realized very quickly that there may be a business here because of how simple it is to use, and then he launched a business for it. But as I said, 90% of it is free. You can use it as long as you don't need deep dive analytics, or there's a bunch of other things that you can do. It's just free, so you can test it. But this is I think obviously this is very important for companies who are building products to not try to create a new behavior in your customer, but to figure out how you can take what they need, which in this instance is adding ordering capabilities online, and putting it into their existing process. And that's what these guys did. So it's TakeApp from Singapore. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I think this is super interesting. I've actually used this in a fast food restaurant about a year ago. I think it was this technology anyways, because it was all WhatsApp enabled. So I remember like going in, like very simple menu, and it was in this particular case, my experience, it was, there was a QR code on the table, and you just scan this QR code and it immediately took you into sort of a very simple order experience, all powered by
Very cool.
WhatsApp on the back end. Facilitated the payments, through that channel and everything else. So yeah, I think this is, exactly, what a lot of these, especially these chains, need. And I love that it's come out of this sort of place of goodness and, helping people, and helping these businesses out in tough times. And now they're able to kind of grow it and scale it from here, and getting the investment they need to sustain that. I mean, not unlike what we did with CanaTrace with all the restaurants, and trying to solve a problem for them and just help out in tough times. So, maybe there's some overlap discussion to be had there with all of the restaurants that we're working with here in Canada, and exposing something like this to them. But I think we're going to see more and more of this, and I think it is about sort of just making that whole user experience simple and easy for the consumer, And at the end of the day, it's just facilitating that order, right? You know,
Yep.
the fact that they're not doing the payment, they're not doing the delivery, they're not doing all that, you know, those other components of it, which there are companies that are better at it, you know, like yours and others, Rob, you know, that can handle some of those components. You know, focus on the simple and deliver and do that well. I think makes a ton of sense. So I'd love to see this thing grow outside of Southeast Asia into, you know, all sorts of markets.
It's an interesting investment from Meta's standpoint, but you can understand why. Along the same lines as where you see a company like Slack going, is that you know, Slack has become not just a piece of software; it's become a platform,
Yeah.
you know, an endpoint for everybody else's software, and that's really how you, and we know this. That I mean, that's how you become part of the fabric, and that's what's happening, obviously, with WhatsApp, and it started off as a simple chat tool, as we all know, a secure chat tool. But just like every other app in Asia, and not so much in North America, but I think Uber is on the path to that, is that they've created the one app. You know, that's what is happening everywhere outside of North America, is the one app where you can do all your banking, all your grocery ordering, all your, you know, your transportation requirements, everything all from one app. And certainly WhatsApp it could be poised to be that if they build more and more and more on top of it, the way that Slack is doing it in North America. I do have a question. Just, you know, we're way over here, but I'm just interested. Like we're not seeing many of those one apps in North America. You know, like the app that does
No.
everything, like we see in Asian countries, Southeast Asia, in China in particular, is that these apps are they do everything for you, and they dominate. And is it just that we're fickle here? Because I see WhatsApp as a potential to be able to do that if they do things properly. The real question is, why isn't anybody, and maybe it's Uber because of what they're doing with Eats and the transportation side, but I'm in the partnerships that they're setting up. But I'm always intrigued by, why isn't any company doing that in Canada and North America? Any thinking there? What is
That
that?
was weird. Just a video just randomly started playing on my computer.
That's good. It
Um,
was a chirpy video,
yes.
but it's a good question. Like I'm always interested because maybe that's what they're trying to do with this platform eventually.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I think we're starting to see some of those inroads happen here in North America. Like, you know, you mentioned Uber. You know, I think to some extent TikTok and some of these others are starting now to add a lot more commerce options. We've covered on the
Yep.
podcast in the last number of weeks. A lot of these companies now are adding, you know, like through those social media platforms, you can, you know, book and pay for your concert tickets or your sports tickets or your, you know, whatever, you know, through these same platforms. So like
Yeah.
they're starting to kind of become more of an ecosystem play, but nothing like what, you know, you have in Asia, you know, and the maturity of that, right? With the Alipay's and the WeChats and
Yeah.
the, you know, so it's
I mean, I met with an ex Lyft colleague yesterday, and what she said was, I said, like, what are you going to do now? And she said, I'm going to go and spend 3 or 4 months in Asia and China. And I said, like, why China? Just simply because if she can get in, simply because the amount of innovation is staggering, and there's such a gap between what's going on there and what's going on here, that it's looking for inspirational ideas. And so deep into this conversation along those lines is that what is taken for granted in China, for example, is something that is so innovative here, and we are what, probably a year, 2 months away as a result of between the two countries, when you look at the innovation and the adoption of that innovation. But anyway,
yeah,
totally
but
derailed
we
this
got we get.
conversation as
I
I do.
agree. I agree, Rob, but like there's caps to that, right? Like, you know, yesterday I
Yeah,
was hearing about China's about to go and seed the clouds so that they can get rain to deal with the droughts,
that's
and I'm
right.
like, no, no, that's a step too far.
It's it's perfectly safe though. What could go wrong? What could go wrong,
Yeah,
man? Like, what
yeah,
could go
yeah.
wrong? Oh yeah,
Anyways,
yeah. Carry on.
all right. Our final story is about a company called Immertia. It's spelled Immertia. And this is a tech startup that's in the augmented reality space. They're based in Victoria in Australia. And they're focused on sort of layering augmented reality on packaging. And so they've been at this for a little while. They had a product called Swigger, which they'd focused on the beverage alcohol industry, and now they've got a new product called Display. I don't know how they come up with these names, but Display is Displai. And yeah, so it's basically, think you walk into a grocery store and there's a package of cereal or a package of, detergent or whatever it is, and then you hold your phone up over this and there's an augmented reality layer, not unlike a Facebook or Snapchat filter, that then overlays, information. It could be an animation, it could be a hologram, it could be, a link to click on to learn more about it, or find out about the the history or the ingredients in that product, or whatever the case might be. Again, not super innovative on the technology here. We've had this type of technology around for a while. When I first read the story, my mind, and even when you and I were doing this podcast years ago, Rob, like, remember covering a company called Blipper out of the UK, that
Yep.
was doing similar types of things on packaging. They were focused more on, sort of consumer goods like Oreos and Cadbury's and things like that at the time. But very, very similar there. The idea here is to animate the packaging and create a virtual experience. I think the one thing I like about this is that I think the timing is good and relevant now, right? We're in a time where everybody's talking about metaverse, everybody's talking about augmented reality and layers on top of the physical world and all of this. So I think unlike companies like Blipper that have been around for 10 years plus, I think this is very relevant in this time. Again, I'm not super excited about the technology that they're doing here, but I think it's timely, and I think brands are jumping on this type of stuff, and I think there could be a good opportunity for it, and it seems very easy in terms of how they built it, in terms of setup. Create multiple animations or bits of content tied to multiple products or SKUs, just a matter of hours. And they've even got it, I think, built in a way that they can tie into existing kind of SKU information, if that's already available through a grocery chain or whatever that's signing on board. So there's a lot of applications for this type of stuff, but yeah, that's kind of my initial thoughts on it. You?
Do you think? Yeah, I mean, we talked about Blipper and Swigger. That's an interesting name as well. Like everything ends with her. Swigger, Tinder, Blipper. But what I want to know is, you remember back when people would just repurpose old ads? So you'd have an ad on television and you say, oh no, now it's the web, and so you'd put like a 45-second ad on the web as a pre-roll, and everybody was up in arms. You have to create the content for the medium. So 6-second ads became relevant. You see those on YouTube. And now I wonder about this as well, is that the examples that they had on their website were just straight up repurposing of existing content, ads that they've got, and that's not going to work. Like, I'm not going to have a VR experience or an augmented reality experience with a package that I'm just going to get an ad for that product. And I'm wondering, does this, like, is the thing that's missing here for adoption the people that are creating the content that is relevant to that medium? Like, and what would that content be that is relevant to that medium? When we started doing this a long time ago, we talked a lot about that farm to fork kind of concept, where you could look at if it was a package of coffee and coffee beans, you could look at fair trade coffee. You could understand the story of the farm that it was farmed on and the people that did, and so you kind of, at least I thought at the time, that's you're creating a brand story around that packaging and that brand of coffee beans. And it didn't go anywhere. I mean, there's QR codes and everything right now, but how many people scan those? And so I wonder if we're in that same instance here, is that this is a really cool technology. What is the purpose of it? The last thing you want is to be in a grocery store behind that asshole in a cart that is scanning every product and just spending 30 seconds in front of them with the augmented reality. Like, wouldn't you just, I think that would be violence. So what is the purpose of doing that? Not just because you can, but what's the reason to do it? And I always struggle with that. I think it's cool, but why?
Yeah, and I agree with what you just said, and like two things, to respond to that. So first off, even going back to the early conversations we had about platforms like Blipper and others back in the day, the stumbling block I think for a lot of those was the cost of creating that unique purpose-built content for the platform, right? And I think that's still an issue, right? That you're highlighting here. And I think the other thing is it is about telling a story, right? And the example that popped into my mind while you were speaking is one of the best uses of this type of technology I've seen is Jose Cuervo, and they did a campaign where they had a bottle of Jose Cuervo, and you could scan this thing, and it basically like told this whole story of like the journey from the agave plant, and the pirate ship and this that, and it was like it was a whole visual storytelling experience, right? But creating that content isn't cheap, right?
No.
And it's not easy to sit there and go, okay, well, I have 100 SKUs in my grocery store, and now I'm going to create some kind of content like that at that level for every one of these things, right? Nobody's going to do that. Nobody can afford to do that. So I think it's still a limiting factor. But I like the technology. I think it has a lot of value. I think there are a lot of use cases for it, especially when you're getting into things like luxury goods or cars or those kinds of things. I think there's a ton of opportunity. So, anyways, yeah, if you're in Australia or anywhere, check out Immersia and their new product. Display, their new product display with an AI.
Good words.
At the end.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with you on that. It's something like, and I think a lot of this technology pushes it. Like if you question the technology, it's good because it's the same thing that that Meta did when they announced their name change and moving into the metaverse, and I think we're a year later and people are scratching their heads still. But it's a conviction that something that is being built now will be a leader in this space at some point, and it has everything to do, man, with timing. Blipper was too early. Like with the capabilities of these phones were like, we didn't have high-speed networks back then when they started. We didn't have the ability, like you couldn't scan even QR codes right from the phone. Like you needed an app, remember? So I think that they pushed the technology, and you have to make sure that you're pushing in the right time, so that you're pushing not against momentum, but you're pushing with momentum, and all these innovations that are coming as a result of, I think probably Facebook making this announcement about the metaverse. Maybe you're still scratching your head about what that really means, but it's kind of opened up these opportunities for these companies now because you've got one of the most influential companies on the planet pushing these things. And so people are paying attention, and that helps a lot.
1,000%. So with that, that's our 4 stories for this week. I do want to highlight that our Retail Loco conference is back in person for the first time since COVID. So October 26th and 27th, we will be in Atlanta, for that conference, and we'll be talking about the metaverse and last mile deliveries and all kinds of things like that. A lot of great speakers. We just secured Wesley Rhodes. He's the head of VP of Tech and Innovation for Kroger, who will be one of our keynote speakers. We've got great sponsors like Radar and Glimpse and companies like that coming down. So get involved, get your ticket, and you can go to just retaillo.co to do that, and you'll see us down there. And Rob will probably be there too. So, yeah.
Oh my God, cannot wait.
Yeah, looking forward to that. So that's it for this week. Thank you for listening and watching, everybody. We appreciate it. If you have story ideas, reach out to us. If you have feedback, we want that. If you have criticism, you can leave it on the social channels. We might look at it. But
leave it in your pocket.
Give us some likes. Give us some love on whatever platform you're consuming this on. And we'll see you next week with another show. Brianna will be back. Maybe Rob will join us too. You never know. And we'll have all 3 of us on the show. That could be good. But thank you, everybody. It's been episode number 583, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
you.